Good morning, everyone, and you're very welcome, or afternoon, to the continuation of the CitA Tech Trend Series 2020. This is the sixth of our meetings this year, and the focus this afternoon is automating real-time data-driven solutions for the AEC space. So we very much have an international panel with us this afternoon from America and Australia. So we've got Matthew Kleeman, co-founder and CEO of Cumulus Digital Systems, John Canner, founder and CEO of Smart Video, and also Matthew Barbutu from Eunomia. So there's our program this afternoon, and so we're going to start with Matt. So Matt, you're very welcome this morning. You're going to be talking about tracking quality and productivity in real time with the Internet of Tools. So if you'd like to share your screen with us.
Yeah,
we can start
now. Good.
And thank you once again for finding the time to join us this morning.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. Are you able to see my screen now?
We can see it perfectly. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, good morning or afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. As Alan mentioned, my name is Matt Kleiman. I am the co-founder and CEO of Cumulus. We are based in Boston, and we are a 2-year-old startup. We started in 2018, but then we actually spun out of a large energy company before that, so this technology has actually been in operation since 2016. And I'm going to tell you how we're providing real-time quality assurance for mission-critical work in maintenance and construction. We at Cumulus were focused on a specific type of work that is common throughout industry verticals, high volume manual work that's mission critical and not easily automated. And the reason we're focusing on this area is that the work practices, while it's very common, you see it whether you're working in the energy sector, in commercial construction, infrastructure, this work is mission critical. It's on the critical path for any project. But when my co-founders and I were working at a large energy company, looking at how we improve productivity on our job sites, we quickly zeroed in on this type of work that had those three qualities as being particularly outdated and inefficient and a cause of a disproportionate number of accidents and downtime and other inefficiencies. So some of the data from the industry that many of you are probably familiar with in one way or another is that more than 30% of work of this type is actually rework that should have been completed properly the first time. And a lot of that is caused simply by misinformation being communicated or lack of information being communicated across parties. Workers are idle for an hour of 1.5 hours per day, just waiting for permits, approvals, instructions. Leaks from accidents on job sites, especially in the processing industries like oil and gas, release more than 60 megatons of CO2 equivalents each year. And these are all avoidable accidents. And then unplanned downtime, depending on what industry you're in, having your processing facilities down can cost you $260,000 on average US dollars per hour just from being down and losing that production. So this was a huge opportunity for us to go after where we can make a really big difference in a really, with a relatively short amount of time. So and this is when we were still working in the energy industry, we went out to the market to find a solution. How do we improve this? And this was in about 2016. Already at this point, industrial IoT, Industry 4.0, have become buzzwords in the industry, and we went and looked at both large and small companies and saw that in the industry there are great solutions for monitoring machines, monitoring energy usage, tracking logistics and people from a tracking around the job site perspective. But the real questions that we knew we had to answer in order to really improve quality of work on job sites was two things. One, was the work done right? And are my workers qualified to be doing the work that they're doing? And in those two questions, we couldn't find any good solutions. And so that's why we had to create our own. And what we ended up creating is something that we call the Internet of Tools. We saw that field mobility, mobile devices, phones, tablets, etc., are becoming ubiquitous on the job site. But what was really interesting to us is that a new breed of tools from major manufacturers that have built-in connectivity were also becoming more and more common. Now, the connectivity is typically used for inventory tracking and management. That's where if you go to the tool manufacturers' websites, what you'll see them using them for today. But we thought, well, what if we were able to take this data from these tools in the field while they're being used, have them paired to a mobile device with a very simple, easy to use mobile app, and use that data to provide real-time paperless quality assurance and progress tracking for this type of mission critical work, and where the tool data is providing the source of truth. And we're also able to use this data as a feedback loop to not only improve quality and productivity generally, but also use it to help the craft improve their own skills and use it as part of a training and learning management program. We just saw a huge amount of opportunity taking this tool data, pairing it with mobile devices in the field, and then have a fully integrated quality management system. So the Cumulus platform has three components, and this is what we released in 2018. One is this whole suite of commercially available digital tools from major manufacturers. More and more come out each year having this type of connectivity. We have a mobile app for iOS and Android that guides workers through each step of their workflow. It's completely modular and customizable. And not only does things like photographs and checklists and whatnot, but also, most importantly, it connects to the tools using Bluetooth. So you would connect to the tools just like you would connect your iPhone to your AirPods or your cell phone to your car, as easy as that. And then the data from the mobile app and the tools all comes into our cloud-hosted control center, where managers, supervisors, inspectors can use that information for real-time quality assurance, real-time monitoring and analytics of the work that's being done in the field. And what we're ultimately getting is we're able to leverage data that has never been collected before today. Typically this information was either just on paper or in people's heads. Right now, we're able to use it and provide performance dashboards, work quality benchmarking of different work activities, analytics around rework and productivity, and we are in the process of building AI-powered planning and analytics, failure prediction using the data coming from the field, use this data to help with vendor selection and contract pricing, and also serving as a source of truth with smart contracts that are just starting to hit the market today. Ultimately, what having this data provides transparency. And when people ask us, what do we sell? People say, what does Disney sell? They sell happiness. We sell transparency and assurance. Because while our customers are either the service providers, the general contractors, or the owners operators, they certainly get direct benefit from using our system in terms of quality assurance, improved safety, paperless reporting, managing workers and contractors more effectively. But even the craft workers, they get improved communication and less paperwork, and also they get recognized for their skills. We gamify it to a degree. Insurers in the local communities also improve from more transparency about the quality and what's being done on the job site. The first application that we're going after, because we had to start, we didn't want to create a system that just tried to be everything for everybody. But we started with bolted joints, and people outside the industries and outside the trades don't think about bolted joints. A lot is something you take for granted, but it's actually responsible for a disproportionate number of rework and accidents on job sites across industries. Where we were from in the energy industry, more than 20% of leaks at processing facilities are because bolted joints were not assembled or maintained properly. As an example of something we're doing right now, we've recently started working in data center construction. We're just starting a project for a major data center construction project for a major operator in mainland Europe, where we're using our system to manage the assembly of bolted joints, both for the air supply cooling systems and also the bus duct connections. Typically today, quality for these types of bolted joints is measured using infrared systems. They're now using our system to be able to track the quality of work in real time instead of trying to discover it after the fact. Our customers use Cumulus for a wide variety of reasons. The three most common in surveys that we do that show up, one, just as I mentioned, improving transparency and communication on the job site. There was a source of truth showing who did what and when they did it. That helps both the contractor and the owner or operator. Improving work quality, of course, is the reason we started out in the first place. And also just reducing paperwork. Our system takes all the information that would be handwritten on reports in the field and by inspectors. It's all now in the app, taking the data from the tools as the validation of that work being done and using that in automatically generated reports. And what this means is that the job goes a lot faster, not because the workers are using the tools any faster, but because all the work, all the waiting and planning that happens beforehand, and most importantly, all of the inspections and quality assurance and analytics that would happen by hand or on paper or maybe in an Excel spreadsheet after the fact is now all done in less than half the time. And so this is just an example with bolted joints. Like I mentioned, you can see the green in the middle is the actual assembly of the bolted joints, and that the tools aren't making the workers turn a wrench any faster than they do. That's physics. We're not putting robots in the field, but it's everything, the bread of the sandwich, so to speak. So everything that happens before, everything that happens after is all cut down. So your overall job time for this type of work is reduced by about half, is what we're seeing. And what this means for value is that we're seeing an immediate ROI for our customers, no matter what the project size is. They start using the system and they're able to, all the time that they save in be able to easily look up and record the work, reduced wait times for your QC or QA inspectors to come to the field, less data review, paperwork management, and fewer reworks. Altogether means that our customers are able to show positive ROI the first year they're using it, whether it's a 10-person job or a 75-person job in the field. So we're seeing great results for now. We've managed more than 800,000 work completions, predominantly in North America and Southeast Asia, but now we are, as I mentioned, starting more and more work in Europe, and we look forward to doing more, hopefully with some of you on the call today. But that is Cumulus at a high level. I don't know, Alan, if we're doing questions now or just saving them for the end, but thank you for the opportunity to be here and look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, when you mentioned the word tools, are we talking here about handheld devices that are used so we're talking about small mechanical tools?
Yes, it's a variety of, it could be handheld wrenches, hydraulic pumps, pneumatic pumps, electric tools of various sorts, pressure gauges, basically anything that has a Bluetooth connectivity, the right type of connectivity, which, as I mentioned, more and more tools are coming on the market today where we're able to talk to.
And who would be the big tool manufacturers? Are we talking about people like Hilti and companies like that?
Yep. Hilti for sure. Probably our biggest partner today is Snap-on in the wrench space, but Hilti for sure. Stanley Black & Decker, DeWalt, company called High Torque. Some of the specialty tool manufacturers are also really good partners of ours.
I know we have a number of Irish companies here. We have a company called Masonry Fixings. They do a lot of sort of, there's obviously, I suppose what we're trying to, are you looking at here at trying to kind of, it seems to be a huge task to try and kind of monitor all the bolts on a project. You could have thousands and thousands. How do you select, or are you talking about everything being smart?
Well, ideally everything is smart. The tools, rather. You don't have to, the bolts, a big advantage of our system is that you don't have to change the infrastructure or the hardware of the bolts at all. You don't have to make any changes to those. So you use your normal bolts you're using today. It's just we're actually monitoring monitoring the work as it's happening. And the setup really depends, if there's a good model or digital plans, that's the ideal, where we could just upload those into the system and use those to guide the workers. If everything is on paper or on spreadsheets, that's still very doable. It just takes a little bit longer to get set up.
Yeah, just wondering, do we have any questions for Matthew before we move on? We've one there from John McGowan. How is the WIP tagged, and how is this ID'd by the tool?
Sure. So we have a few ways that we do it. It's a great question. A few ways we do it. Most typically today, we use QR codes. So there's a little, especially in a larger project like a data center or a chemical facility, these bolted joints are tagged with paper, typically with information written on them. We just replace that with a QR code, whether it's a sticker or a metal QR code in more hostile environments. And then the person takes their mobile device, scans the QR code, and the system knows where they are.
Yeah. So I guess in a kind of a critical mission type project, obviously they're using state-of-the-art, perhaps BIM technology, but of course they want to try and be assured that the work is correctly installed. Is that the idea, that you're trying to give the assurance to the client that the work is done? And I know we have I3PT is an organization here that focuses on construction certification. So I think this is probably really interesting, the fact that, you can certify, you can gain that assurance as you go through the project.
Yeah,
is that the idea?
That's right. Most of the workflow management systems that are out there really stop at the work order level. So you have a work order, and then somebody tags, yes, I completed that work order. We really start at the work order and work down into the details, where not only is someone saying, yes, that work order was done, but now we're able to show who did it, when they did it, and most importantly, to the extent the tool can tell us how well it was done. And so it's really delivering that assurance that not only does somebody check a box and say, yes, that work was done, but now we have validated data say, yes, in fact, there's objective data that, yes, that work was done, who did it, and how long it took them to do it.
So obviously you do a lot of work in the industrial sector. So what I'm going to try and do, just we've got a few minutes, maybe open it up to the people who are attending just to see, can they see how this technology can be used in a construction, more of a construction context going forward. Anyone want to come in there and maybe put on your mic? Any questions for Matthew on that? Nope. Okay, we might move on. Okay, Matt. So we'll come back to you at the end. Thank you very much for your presentation, and that is certainly, I think people probably could get more time to come back to you for questions at the end. So thank you. So our second speaker, John Canner, is founder and CEO of SmartVid, and Josh is going to be talking about act, don't react, using AI to predict safety risk in construction. Just by way of information, tomorrow the CIF have their health and safety conference. We've actually got presentations from the WHO. Obviously, the whole pandemic thing is taking central stage there. But health and safety, my God, that is so important, isn't it, for our industry? So any smart technology can be developed to maybe predict, prevent, control, manage health and safety. It can only be a good thing. So you're very welcome, Josh.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. So we at SmartVid are focused on how you can use data that you have today or data that you can gather to act, not react. That expression actually is an expression my grandfather taught me. He really believed strongly in trying to, and I didn't realize at the time it would tie back to my career, trying to get ahead of challenges and trying to predict them before they happen. What we're seeing is at SmartVid now, our industry as a whole, you can gather data and actually predict safety risk before it happens. You can act, not react. So let me tell you a little bit about who we are. Just like Matthew Kleiman, we're a Boston-based company. So Cumulus is in Boston. We, SmartVid, are in Boston. I'd like to say that Boston with all of the Irish pubs and everything else. Our strong connection to Ireland is a hotbed of construction technology. The SmartVid is an artificial intelligence software company, 100% focused on construction. You can see some of the large names that we work with there on the screen. Our focus is 100% on safety. We work with other construction technology vendors. So if folks on the webinar, if you're working with Autodesk BIM 360, or you're working with Procore, or you're working with Oracle, we work with all of those systems. We can use the data from those systems for our predictive analytics. So we can tie right into what you're doing today. We're about 80 people all over the world, with focus here in Boston, but we do work in Europe as well. We've had work on the continent and overall. At the end of the day, the challenge in Europe is the same as the challenge in Europe with regards to safety. You know, we have such advanced economies, we have such advanced technology, but in the United States, 3 people die every day in construction still. In the United States, the overall rate of construction fatalities has stayed more or less flat for the last decade. There's an intractable problem here that we need to break through. And that's what we're doing, not just to benefit safety, but also, as you'll see, to address core costs in the insurance arena. Speaking of core, the core question we ask our customers and folks who are thinking about working with us is, do you want to be a data-driven company? And pause on that for a second. Do you want to use the data you have today to do a better job of managing what you're doing in the field and ultimately reducing your risk? If you do, we have at SmartVid, we've built a whole journey that you can work on with us to move to being data-driven, in particular in the area of safety. Now, what's one of the reasons you want to become data-driven in safety? Well, safety risk is about 50% of insurance cost, and insurance cost is going through the roof. So 4 to 10%, it's been already starting at a huge amount of your overall construction delivery budget. Anywhere from 4 to 10% of your project costs can be insurance and climbing, and yet your margins are anywhere from 0.5% to 1.5%. So according to a broker that we work with at Aon, he put it in a really good way. He said, well, you need to think about that. As an industry, we're spending $500 billion to insure $100 billion in profit. It's a 5-to-1 ratio. And as a result, the total cost of insurance on any job for any company, it can be make or break on the profit side, but also on the company side. So what do? Well, we help you use your data to go from reacting to safety to being able to predict, and go even beyond predict to prescribe what you can do to reduce your risk. Now, you may be familiar with examples from other industries, preemptive maintenance. So telling manufacturers, knowing which machines are going to need to actually have work done on them. Navigation apps like Waze, which can actually predict where you need to go based on existing conditions and what you've done in the past. And then, of course, Netflix, which is always trying to recommend for you and sort of predict what kinds of things you might like based on your past behavior. Well, we're doing the same thing with the safety data that you have today, as well as the data that you can gather, to go from just describing and trending, looking backwards, to predicting where you're going. To give you one example, we're working with a company that, and I'll show you a specific example in a second. We're working with a company that was able to just predict 85% of their incidents in a coming week. They could identify which projects were going to have 85% of their incidents, and then be able to actually mobilize their safety and health teams to be able to focus on those jobs. So how do you do that? How do you predict 85% of your incidents? Well, what we do is we take in data that you may have from various sources. So maybe as a company, you're gathering safety observations through an observations tool. You have data in your ERP system on your projects. You have hours, headcounts. You have incident data today. And then you also have photos. So you may be taking progress photos. Maybe you have site cameras. We can take all of that data, from the photos to the headcount data. We bring it into our AI engine, which we've nicknamed after a field superintendent here in northern New Jersey. So as we like to say, IBM has Watson, Amazon has Alexa. We in the construction industry, we have Vinny. If you want to be formal, you can call him Vincent. And we take all of that data, and then Vinny analyzes it and creates, it's a bit of a joke, but this is a very serious matter. We predict safety risk by job and allow you to understand which jobs are at higher risk of an incident, allowing you to take action, to act, not react to those risks, and substantially reduce your risk of an incident. How does it work? Well, it's pretty straightforward. When you feed that data into Vinny and you're up and running with a predictive model, we are generating a rank from 1 to, let's say, one customer is 150, from 1 to 150 of your projects by risk rank. And then we tell you how that job has jumped in a given week from risk to risk. So you know that this project, 11145, fake project name, is now the highest risk. These are your, let's say, top 10 jobs in terms of risk. And then if I click on that project name, what it does is it tells me the reasons why. So it gives me not just the prediction, but also the prescription of what to do. Maybe the job is working overtime. Maybe we have a bunch of high-risk observations. Foreman ratio is an indicator of what my supervisory ratio is on that job. These are all metrics that have been shown to be able, in your data on your jobs, to be able to predict the likelihood of incidents in coming weeks, and then allow you to focus on those jobs, take these actions, and reduce the risk of those incidents. One of the key things that we do that's different is that in addition to pulling in your data around manpower and your different, let's say, supervisory ratios, we even pull in the weather, just to give you some example of the kind of data we pull in. We have our own capability for analyzing all of your photos and video content. It's what we're known for. That's one of the reasons why our name is Smart Vid, is that we actually have some intelligence that we can apply to that. So we pull in things like your progress photos and other data, and we can analyze them using our Vinny, the AI engine. Vinny can take data from a whole bunch of different sources: Procore, Oracle, Autodesk, 360 data like Struction Site. We work with site camera companies. Sidekick is an example of a new one of those. You can use our product to gather photos from site. You can also use our product to gather safety observations from site. Any data you need, if you're not gathering it today for safety risk prediction, we can help you with. What Vinny's Photo AI is trained to do is see now over 80 categories of risk. So we've built out 80 different things that Vinny can detect. All of these then are leading indicators that can go into the predictive engine. Some of the most basic stuff includes our workers wearing the appropriate PPE. Now with COVID around, that includes COVID type protections like face masks and our workers' social distancing. Given the high risk of slip and fall incidents, work at height is a key area. Slip and trip is another key area. We're detecting workers on ladders. We're detecting standing water. We're doing a whole bunch of automatic detections here. Other examples, you can see them here, everything from trenching to guardrails to impalement hazards. At the end of the day, what our safety monitoring is doing is it's gathering more data. The goal here is to act, not react. And safety monitoring gives you, think of it like an automated way of gathering more observations. So what SmartVid is doing, it's giving you the most observations that you can have to give the most data to then be able to create the best predictions about what's going to happen. What does this mean in terms of the overall data that you get? Well, you can start doing some really interesting stuff. So this is a US-centric view, but you can actually, we're now benchmarking our customer base to the tune of over 50,000 or more workers a month for their COVID compliance. So social distancing compliance, glove compliance, face mask compliance. We allow companies then to benchmark themselves, so to see where they're at and then to try and improve. We're also delivering alerts and reporting. So for any of these things that Vinny is seeing and for any of the predictions, we're able to deliver that to the field, to field personnel and project managers, and to superintendents and others, to allow folks to stay on top of what Vinny is seeing and predicting. We also have dashboards, not just for the overall predictions of risk, but for the components of risk. So here's a work at height dashboard. It's an example of one of 11 different dashboards we have, which show you for your different projects, for example, what's the work at height going on, what kinds of ladders are being used. One really interesting example is we have Vinny detecting site ladder usage. Many companies have a prohibition on site ladders. but they don't know that they're actually still being used on their jobs. Vinny sees those. And last but not least, we have COVID-19 metrics that you can use, not just at the company or, the country level, but for each of your projects. So your social distancing compliance, your glove compliance, face mask compliance, all available to you. Now, we're a construction software company. We want to help you take advantage of the data that you're already gathering, or if you're not gathering it, help you figure out how to get to that point so you can predict incidents. So we think of this as a journey to getting towards predictive and prescriptive safety analytics. So to get started, it's very, very simple. You connect with us, and we'll evaluate your existing systems in what we call a quick connect program. We can connect up to those systems. We can look at the data you have and then provide an assessment of your readiness for the journey to go to prescriptive analytics. We'll also, as a side benefit, and this is all at no cost to you, we'll benchmark you to your peers in the construction industry for everything from safety observation rates to a bunch of the other potential predictors of risk. And then what we do is we start the journey together. If you have a safety observations tool, we can pull that in. If you don't, we have a safety observations tool that you can start using that ties into the way we do predictive and prescriptive analytics. Same goes for photo data. If you have existing photo data, that's great. We can use that to feed Vinny. If you don't, we can recommend site cameras, or you can use our mobile app to start gathering photos. All of those give you more observations. At the end of this journey, our customers are seeing they are reducing their incident rate by anywhere from 25 to 60%, substantially reducing their overall safety, the cost of safety to their company, and improving the culture and the well-being of their workers because they can act, not react. They can look forward, not backwards, because they've got better data and more observations to make better decisions. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Alan, to see if there's any questions from the audience.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much for that. You mentioned BIM 360 there.
Yes, sir.
Does it integrate with the BIM 360 IQ? Which
it does.
It does.
Yeah.
Can you tell us how that works? Because that, I've read in the past how BAM, and of course we have BAM in Ireland as well. They've worked with BIM 360 IQ to try and help them predict, risk situations on projects and such like.
Yeah.
And it takes away kind of some of the heavy lifting for data analysis. So you might just maybe talk a bit about that.
Yeah, the BIM 360 Project IQ, they are very much aligned with us in our mission. So they're looking to predict in a number of areas, and quality is one, design is another. They also do some work in the area of safety. But what they do, we complement them in that we are actually predicting which projects are at risk for incidents, because we're pulling in BIM 360 data as well as incident data as well as other data. Yeah. So we actually complement BIM 360 nicely.
Very good, very good. And the construction workers in the US, are they required to wear face masks? Or is this a state law? Does it depend on the state?
It's even more granular than that. It depends on the municipality. So it can get down to the local level. Some states require them, others don't. So it really depends on the area. What we've seen is that all construction firms in the US are now, I would say almost all of them, are requiring face masks, in particular if social distancing cannot be maintained.
Okay. We have a company here in Ireland called Evercam. The name would suggest camera technology. So this would be, it's becoming now quite usual for construction sites to have time-lapse cameras on site. How well does your technology integrate with the camera technology?
Great, yes.
Or is your solution a camera solution? No,
it's not a camera solution. We're a software company, Alan, and we pull in data from wherever it may come. If there's an Evercam time lapse on the site, that could be a source of data for us. What we've found, however, is that most time-lapse cameras are too far away from the site to actually be able to see much of, make many useful observations in terms of risk and safety.
Yeah, I think we've got actually an Evercam employee or CEO or a very important person anyway on the call. Vinny, how are you?
I'm well indeed, Alan. Thanks very much. I really enjoyed that presentation. We've come across smartvid.io over the years. It's a really nice system. Well done, Josh.
Thank you.
And what I don't see is our cameras listed on the on your integration list.
Let's get that fixed out.
We'll get that sorted. We met your guys at UK exhibitions and that before, and we're now launched in the US. Now, what might help with ourselves is we're putting in like 12 megapixel cameras, and we're doing a lot on a bit of the AI recognition of vehicles and that ourselves. But you're definitely way further down the road on the health and safety monitoring. So it'd be great. There's bound to be projects we're on together, and we could. Funnily enough, Owen is on the call, is on this call as well, who organises our integrations with Procore and all the others. So he can get that set up in no time. But yeah, well done. It looks great.
Thanks.
And tell me, Josh, you mentioned something very important there about insurance companies. I mean, if a client or a contractor had all these great tools, the Evercam tools, you know, the SmartVid tools in place, would that cause them to say, hey, you know what, I think that's great, I'm going to reduce the cost of this insurance? It's giving me more assurance, you know what I mean? Do you have any case studies of what I'm asking, I suppose?
We do. We have case studies of where customers have been able to use the visibility and think of it as the predictive nature of what we're doing to be able to negotiate better rates, particularly at renewal time.
Right. So I'm not sure if we have any contractors with us this afternoon. I mean, is this something that would cause premiums to fall, reduce? Could this be can anyone come in there? Do we have anyone from a contracting background? No, we don't have anyone. Okay. Well, we might just move on.
Alan,
yes.
Carl here from Stewart Construction. I wouldn't be able to say the cost of the insurance. It doesn't come under my BIM remit. But I was just interested in just Evercam, and there's a few other companies that we use, Hollow Builder as well, that we had a trial with. Would that system work with 3D or 360-degree cameras inside in the building to track progress? We find it very, very efficient even now for the health and safety officers on site to track if things aren't being done appropriately. And would that be calculated in Josh's metrics?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So 360 imagery is a key part of the kinds of analytics Vinny can do. So we can actually, instead of having your safety teams need to look through Hollow Builder, you can just feed Hollow Builder data to SmartVid, and we will automatically generate a safety report for them.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. No, I actually, you mentioned, I know Vinny mentioned about various exhibitions, and of course, Digital Construction Week is a big player in that in the UK. Obviously, this year for various reasons, for COVID reasons, they didn't run it. But I met a company last year in London called Scaled Robotics. You ever come across them?
Yeah. There's some really interesting automated robotics capture companies out there.
Yeah. So what they have is they have a kind of a ruggedized vehicle, you could say, four-wheeled vehicle, with a camera mounted on it. I don't know if Vinny's come across this. And but this thing will, work its way through the site. Very helpful on what they call linear projects, large-scale civil engineering road projects, on pipeline projects, whatever. But this thing is constantly working its way around site. It will only move into certain positions if it feels that there's a sort of it's safe to do so, whatever. But it's capturing internal behaviors, internal working as well, which is really interesting, because obviously with time-lapse technology, they tend to be in fixed locations. Vinny, do you want to come back on that? I don't know. Have you heard about these guys?
Yeah, and I think increasingly there's going to be more options with that. You know, whether the camera is on a person's helmet, or it's on a drone, or it's on a little device. That's the future. Things are getting faster and cheaper, and data's getting cheaper and faster, and batteries are getting better. So that's the future. I mean, we've picked our lane, and it's fixed position cameras, and it's record everything at high frame rates. Yeah, and we're really excited about all the new stuff that's coming too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, listen, thanks, Vinny, and thanks, Josh, for a great presentation. And it's nice to know that you guys are talking and collaborating, and I'm sure we'll hopefully see you and Matthew over in this direction in the next few years as one of our events. So thanks a lot. So we're going to move on now to a gentleman who needs to go to bed. It's now probably midnight, if not later, in Australia. So Matthew, you're very welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, what time is it with you now?
We're not quite at midnight yet, but we're
okay. Well, we won't keep you up too much longer. So if you want to share your screen, so Matthew, Alberto, by the way, all these speakers, it was really Alice Long from Bricks and Mortar. You know, you might have seen her at the CitA Tech Live. All these people are highly recommended, and some great stories so far. So Matthew, you've got a company called Eunomia. Hope I pronounced that right.
That is correct. And yeah, coming to you from Melbourne in Australia, and happy to report that we are 24 days now, no COVID cases. So
wow,
definitely leading the way on that front.
Okay, well, I've got family over there in Sydney and Brisbane and Auckland, and they're all doing well. So listen, you want to take away your presentation. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so thanks very much for having me today. You can see my screen okay?
Yes, we're good to go.
Great. Yeah, so thanks everybody in the audience and for the hosts to have us along today, and also for Alice from Brick and Mortar who did make the introduction. As you would know, we're invited to talk today about tech trends, and in focusing on our IoT platform, there's some areas that we'll cover, and those are in some cases specific to what we're building, but I think some of the themes that we'll talk about relate to IoT generally. As I mentioned then, I'm coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. Our vision and our mission and purpose is really to help construction to be a more high-performing industry, and ideally to be one of the most high-performing industries in the world. There's definitely positive trends, both in terms of the capital that's being invested in innovation and technology in construction, albeit maybe lagging behind some other industries. But I'm personally really excited to be working in this sector now, only having come into it in the last couple of years. Prior to that, working in the logistics and supply chain technology space. A little bit about us, as per the introduction, Brick and Mortar Ventures in the US is our largest investor, and they have been a great supporter of ours and in terms of developing our technology and go-to-market. We're also fortunate to have some other really supportive investors here in Australia. The Taronga Group is a sector-focused fund with a couple of European investors, but primarily Australian capital. And Aura Group is also one of our investors based out of Asia, but also with a presence in Australia. CSIRO, Data61, which I'll talk to a little bit more in the presentation, was the original inventors of our technology, and so is a very strong partner of ours. Microsoft has a program which is about encouraging B2B focused startups and scale-ups to assist them in terms of both architecting their technology, but also in co-selling to their large and extensive customer base. And then in Australia, we're also part of an R&D program that was being funded by the Australian government, which is called Building 4.0, and it is a program, a longitudinal program, over $100 million of funding to industrialise building in Australia. Some of the customers that we work with there, as you can see, primarily they're general contractors, in some cases more integrated, Lend Lease and Mirvac, both developers and contractors in that capacity. Our team is a really good mix, a number of them from the construction industry, but others who've worked on developing technology for a variety of different disciplines. And given that we're an IoT product, that's everything from the physical devices, the sensors and the firmware that runs on those devices, right up through the ingestion of that data back to the cloud, and then the processing and analytics that sits around that. My personal background, as I mentioned before, EFM is the largest freight aggregator in Australia, and has developed a unique position in this market. Before that, I worked in the mining industry in BHP, and my two co-founders, Adam, extensive experience in the construction industry, is our subject matter expert with Lend-Lease and Multiplex, and Matthew is from the US originally, but worked most of his career in Europe and more recently in Asia before joining Uber down here in Australia before us. So in terms of why are we here and why we're doing what we're doing, this is probably the most common problem statement that our customers talk to us about, and both Matt and Josh have articulated, I suppose, some really good points about the impact of time and timeliness of data. And I think where Josh is going, being able to see the future is ideally where we all want to get to. And I think the construction industry is on a journey to get there. The thing that we're really trying to do is provide better real-time access to information to help identify perhaps what those lead indicators of success might be. And probably this quote from the managing director there has been instrumental to us in our journey, was our first customer in Australia, and has continued to be a great supporter of ours. So what does it look like in practice? As you can see there, left of screen is a typical job site. That's a project that we're working on here in Melbourne. It will be the tallest university building in the Southern Hemisphere once completed, a 30-storey building. In the middle, you can see the devices that we developed in partnership with CSIRO, using a combination of technologies, Bluetooth at the core and LoRaWAN, which is a long-range communication protocol. And then right of screen is our digital twin, which we've created in partnership with Autodesk using their Forge platform, and being able to connect telemetry data, so data being produced by these sensors in the field, both those that are used for tracking objects that are moving both on the job site and in the supply chain, and monitoring the condition of different attributes or elements of the building site, and representing those in different visual ways, both in 2D and 3D, like you can see there. I would say IoT in construction is still relatively new, depending upon the audience. Some people are more familiar, others less so, but the timing is really good. The cost of sensor devices is coming down at an accelerating rate, and that's not just true of sensors, but of most computing power. Obviously, cloud is becoming a much more predominant way of hosting and processing data. And the proliferation of mobile devices in the field has enabled things like our technology to become more mainstream and certainly more practically adopted. And I think that the industry is also starting to recognise that automation of repetitive tasks is actually a good thing, not a bad thing. It's certainly not there to try and put people out of jobs. There's well documented in most parts of the world in the industry, there's a shortage of labour. I think to attract the best and brightest of the next generation, we need to be giving them the right digital tools and technologies, and certainly automating as much as possible the tasks that are not as valuating as what they could be focusing their time on. A little bit on the history of our technology. As I mentioned, CSIRO is Australia's national science agency. They have over 5,000 researchers, and about $1 billion a year goes into funding their research. In many cases, that might be focused on things that are important to the national interest of Australia, for example, the environment and industries that are important to us, like tourism and agriculture. But also they have a great legacy in radio frequency technologies, IoT being one of them. You can see there in the centre of the screen 3 of both CSIRO's greatest inventions, but also Australia is a relatively small country. Those are pretty significant inventions. Wi-Fi definitely is something that we would all probably find it hard to imagine a world before we had Wi-Fi. Google Maps, most people would have used or use on a fairly regular basis. And polymer banknotes are not used in all countries, but certainly in the countries they are, they're considered to be fairly advanced from a security standpoint to prevent against counterfeiting and things like that. And we and CSIRO and our partners believe that our bleed technology is hopefully going to be the next world-class invention from CSIRO, and that's really what we're striving to deliver, both for ourselves and for CSIRO and for Australia. To give you a sense of what that looks like for someone who's in the field, let's say in a construction site, the analogy that we like to reference is that it's kind of like a Google Maps experience, and depending upon what your favorite mapping application is, whether that's Apple or Google or Waze that Josh mentioned before, we've all become pretty familiar with the idea that to get to where we need to go, that depending upon the time of day, the day of the week, the circumstances or the situation can change, and that can have a significant impact in what is the preferred way of navigating to where we need to be, and also to be able to locate things that might be of interest on our journey, whether that's a gas station or a cafe or a restaurant and the like. And for a long time, people in the construction sites haven't had access to that kind of experience, and to be able to understand, as you can see there in our mobile app, to understand what's around them, whether that be other people or other tools or other equipment or materials, the things that they need to be productive and the things they need to be able to build successfully, both being able to see that before they perhaps go to the work phase. If that's up a high-rise building, that can be sometimes a time-consuming process to get up and down from the point of entering a building, and knowing that the right things are in the right place at the right time can be a huge time saver for them, and also help to plan the work accordingly and sequence those works that are coming after them. There's a bit of detail there just about why the technology is particularly unique. I can't take the credit for that. CSIRO was working on this technology for a couple of years before I saw it being showcased at their national event they have once a year, where they introduce industry partners who could potentially commercialise the IP that they've been working in the research labs on. But the most practical things are that by using Bluetooth as the core technology, it means that we can interface with other devices like mobile phones and tablets that also use Bluetooth. We have the ability to transmit data over short range in a local area network context over Bluetooth, and a long range context when we need to get data back to the cloud. All of the devices run on batteries, coin cell batteries, and can last for extended periods of time, into the multiple years, depending upon the use case or application. Mobile devices can be part of the network, like you saw before. They can localize the device itself, like you would if you were outdoors, and obviously indoors where GPS doesn't work, or in a multi-level building where GPS would give you some idea of where you are, but it wouldn't allow you to understand where you are in terms of the altitude. It means you can use it for a variety of different use cases. And the power consumption is something we've worked really hard to manage, such that the devices can, when they're not active, go into a sleep mode and then wake up when they're in motion or when they need to transmit data. And that's it. So our belief and something that we're working hard every day to deliver is that in the future, construction can and will be more connected with real-time construction data, making it accurate, making it reliable, and most importantly, making it automated so that people can do the best work that they can without having to do some of that more menial tasks. Yeah. That's it for me. I've got some case studies if you wanted to look at them in more detail, but maybe I'll pause there, and maybe if we wanted to go to questions.
Thanks very much, Matthew. Yeah, I mean, there's a real synergy between what you all have been speaking about this morning, and that's trying to drive construction up in the kind of productivity scale. It's also, it's interesting that the technology seems to have come from your national science agency in Australia. We have also very large research organizations in Ireland, people like Tyndall and so on and so forth, but we don't have a dedicated centre of excellence for construction. And actually, it's something that's been discussed now, and our government has promised now admittedly this was pre-COVID, but they have promised to fund a dedicated centre for construction research and innovation, and they've actually appointed a person to lead that. That person spoke at a previous event, so that's really interesting. Just talking a little bit about case studies. I mean, all three of you, and indeed what you were saying there at the end, Matthew, is that, where is all this information going to go to, and how is it going to be consumed? I mean, are the personnel on site trained? You're talking here about the production staff, the foremen, the managers of these projects. Do they have the time? Do they have the skills to be able to consume this information and respond?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. There's probably a field response, and then there's an off-site or an office-based response. I think one of the challenges that we will all face, both us as providers of technology and the audience who might be consumers of technology, is that when an industry like construction has been perhaps slower to adopt technologies, and then with a great wave of investment has come an inordinate amount of new entrants to the market, it definitely must be hard for those looking to buy new technologies, because to be able to understand, well, what are the new trends is part of it, and is this a trend, or is this a fad, or is this something that's going to become a staying force and a significant factor. I look back in Australia and in Melbourne in particular, Aconex was one of the most successful construction tech companies that's ever been. They started 20 years ago, and back, speaking to one of the founders, he's one of our investors, and back then, we think we have challenges today in construction, but 20 years ago, the ways of working were so different to what exists. So I think we're all fortunate that there's a stronger baseline, but I think the user in the field wants to consume the data in a certain way, and is probably more concerned to either Josh's examples of what's going to happen, or to what Matt and I probably talked to of, has this been done right? I think quality is important, and what is happening right now, because I need to make decisions. Construction resources are perishable. If they aren't consumed, they dissipate. But I think the longitudinal, time series data, the jury's probably out about where that best sits. I think systems like Josh's have got huge potential for more visual data, but then there's a lot of documentation that still exists in construction, and Aconex and Procore, certainly in most parts of the world, probably have a fairly strong position in the document management space. And then there's lots of acquisitions happening. So as you see more acquisitions, then those tools like Autodesk in particular, is by acquisition garnering a larger share of the pie in terms of the amount of data that they're responsible for, and they're bringing new tools to market as well.
Yeah. So, we heard earlier from Cumulus Digital Systems that their focus, would it be right in saying, Matthew, your focus is mainly on QA?
Yes, quality and productivity. That's right.
Okay, and then from Josh's perspective, it's mainly safety.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then for Wynomia, what is it? Is it everything, or is it like focused like the other guys? And are you looking at all the data? It was then you're talking about something that it's like trying to eat an elephant. You can't eat the whole elephant. You got to break it down. So
I think that's a very good observation, and I would say that one of the strengths and weaknesses of IoT is that it is a fairly flexible type of technology. If you think about the interactions we would have with it, people use Siri and Alexa. People in their house probably have smart lighting and sensors for doing different things. And we've found that as well. Like, we've only been in business 2.5 years, and yet we've seen different use cases around materials, people, equipment, tracking, monitoring. And I think that we and the industry are probably still on a learning curve to really be able to home in on what is the most impactful way of using this technology. But it's kind of a network effect. It's like you put most construction sites don't have Wi-Fi. We're putting a network into those job sites using these sensors. That you can leverage a network better. The more devices that connect into that network and get utility from it, the more value gets created.
maybe before we open up to more Q&A, just an observation that I have on the industry. You know, the sort of sense I get from construction is they're almost too busy to think about technology. You know, they're too busy to invest in R&D. You know, we got to get this project finished as quick as we can. But as Matthew was saying at the very start, you know, the problem is that the idle work and the rework is what's really costing them at the end of the day. You know, we take things, we build, then we waste. So I think contractors, construction companies need to invest in smart technology. I mean, when I was on site a number of years ago, many years ago, 20 years ago, you know, the site foreman, everything was taken by hand. They were doing their daily diaries, their daily returns. That must have all moved on now to a point where you're getting real information at the touch of a button that'll help you become more productive. So maybe we'll just move on and try and open this up. You know, these guys have made a huge effort to get up early and stay up late. So can we have a few questions from some of the audience maybe? Don't you like to come in or maybe put your questions in the chat box there?
Alan, there's a couple of questions there in the chat.
Yeah,
Do you want me
I
to
can see them.
those
Yeah,
to start off?
There's one there. Can this information be mapped to a BIM model? Great question there from Owen O'Neill.
Yeah, that is a great question. I actually spent about an hour and a half earlier this evening chatting to our friends at Mace in the UK and in London specifically, and that's exactly what we're doing with them. So visualising the status of different building components in their Mace Tech business unit, which is their industrialised construction methodology. That's basically what happens is that the telemetry or the status from the sensor is pushed into a database. The database is connected to the BIM model and the updates happen automatically.
Okay, very good. We've also got a question here from John McGowan. John, are the CSIRO sensors similar to powered RFIDs?
That is exactly what they are, and the benefit that brings is a better range than RFID. So not a significant cost difference in the devices, but because you have battery, it means that they can range anywhere from 30 to 50 meters, depending upon the conditions, which means that you don't need to have readers positioned like you would, or to actually interact with it through a
on the scale of a job like you mentioned, that large building you talked about, how many sensors would be on that site? And are they only installed on a temporal basis, or are they actually left there permanently?
Yeah, so there's kind of two different types, as you can see on my screen there. So this one is what's positioned around the building, so fixed into position. So that process would be someone has decided that the layout for this particular building, that the position should be, you know, X, Y, Z, those locations. Someone would go out with their mobile app, basically scan that code on the device and confirm where it's going to be positioned. They'd drop a pin on a map and say, this is now in this position, and it acts like a satellite or a cell phone tower would for positioning purposes. But in some cases, they'll stay in the building. They might be built around, or that they might be only there for a temporary period of time, depending on the works. The average floor plate of a high-rise building might have anywhere between 6 and 10 of those, depending upon the level of accuracy or level of precision at which things want to be tracked, and that basically defines how big the zones would be. And then these other devices.
Yeah, sorry, you showed me another smaller device there.
Yeah,
sorry.
So these smaller ones are those that are attached to the objects that might be moving around. Depending upon, this one's a bit more ruggedized, maybe for equipment that could get knocked around. This one primarily is used for maybe on the hard hat of a worker, or potentially on tracking of stillages or pallets of materials, because it's a fairly small form factor. And
are they costly? What does it cost?
No, they're not, and they're also reusable. So, in many instances, the tag will have multiple lives over its life, or multiple uses over its life. And again, to that concept of flexibility, today you might be using this tag for purpose A, and then when it's finished, that cycle of construction has completed. All you do is just scan the code and say you're deactivating it, and then the tag, like I said, will last for more than 12 months. So then you can just repurpose it. They just have double-sided tape. You put them onto another object, and they go back into circulation. So
there you go, industry. There you go, guys. It's not going to cost you much. So there must be some questions that you would have for Matthew. I mean, this technology is, and I think Vinny mentioned earlier on, the cost of this technology is constantly coming down, isn't it? So, like, you know, why not use it on your site? So, any questions for any of the speakers before we move to closing up?
Yeah, Alan, I just have one there.
Thanks, Cathal.
Just to you, Matthew, you're there for geolocating, moving items in a building. Is there any concept of putting them on, let's say you have fan coil units in the ceiling void, that they could contain data relating to manufacturer and maintenance schedules within that, which we normally put into a BIM model? Or would there be a way of putting a tracker on, let's say, a fan coil unit that doesn't move, obviously, but having that directly integrated with your facilities management system, that if you were in with your phone on the floor plate, you could easily access all the information by just standing or scanning the unit code? Or is that...
That's a great question, and also one of the benefits of these devices, because they can transmit not only over Bluetooth but over that long range network. You don't even need to go to the location. So, you know, we have, similar to what you just described, we have projects in Australia where those devices are attached to areas of the job site that might represent safety hazards. So they're not things that are moving, but just that might have a status of safe or unsafe or open or closed or whatever that might be. And because of the range, that can broadcast back to a gateway, which is hundreds of meters away, not even on the job site, actually, you know, to an adjoining building. And the data goes directly into the cloud, and it can then send notifications if one of those areas becomes unsafe. They can notify the people who are working in that area or the site manager. So in the same way, and to Alan's point, that the cost of adding sensors to these, whether that be for you know, temperature or humidity or a variety of different things, it's, you know, at an accelerating rate, the cost of those is coming down and down as they go into large scale production. So there's lots of different things you can measure and monitor from afar.
And of course, we keep hearing about it. Does that answer your question, Cathal?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know, we keep hearing about digital twins. Is this where really this is all going? You know, that not only are we going to build these models, we're going to build these models and we're going to monitor the facility during its operation. You know, is this really where it's all going, that we need to kind of sensor up these buildings?
Yeah, I think
both during construction and also for operation maintenance.
I think that applies equally to maybe all three of our technologies, really. And sensors, you know, the terminology of digital twin and sensors. There's, you know, many different types of sensors. You know, cameras are sensors, and you know, in Matt's case, tools can be sensors. You know, our particular devices are used for tracking and monitoring. But I think, you know, the concept that there is ways of collecting data that, you know, I think we all accept data is valuable, but we also recognise that depending upon, you know, the research report you read, but, you know, the vast majority of construction data that we collect today goes unused or doesn't get used very effectively. I think, you know, if we can all kind of accept that data will be valuable today and it will be valuable in the future, and if we can find better ways of harvesting and collecting it without humans having to be involved, because we are not great data collectors, we're not reliable, we can't be in all places at once. There's, you know, issues in terms of as we transpose data, we can sometimes, you know, confuse it or color it with our own biases. So I think, yeah, these different types of sensing technologies, to be able to collect it in a more automated way, and then, you know, a digital twin is probably an overused term, and I try not to use it too much, but, you know, like, we find that very commonly, that for people even who aren't really used to working with BIM or in 3D, the idea that in a cloud-based you know, viewer, they can see the model, they can see it rotate, they can see what's happening, you know, inside the building and what's moving around in the building. You know, that even before COVID, that was important. I think, you know, now that, you know, going to site can be more difficult, and we've all probably rethought how much we need to travel and physically go to places. I think the need for remote monitoring and visualization in digital twins or things of that nature will be pretty high.
Absolutely. And actually, we've got probably a technical question here from John Hilliard. Are these units available in ATEX configuration? I couldn't answer that question. Can you? John, what's ATEX?
It's intrinsically safe, right? So
ATEX is an explosion zone where there's gases and volatile liquids.
Yep. So
I see. Yeah.
So our tool, so the tools that we interface, many of them are ATEX or UL is the other standard, standard body. Our ATEX Zone 1 certified, and we use them in refineries, chemical plants, things like that. So yes.
I see.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so do we have any more questions? We're a little bit ahead of schedule. We're due to finish at 1:30. I really enjoyed the event this afternoon. I mean, it just shows you, even in the one, the three different vertical industries, focal points you all have, but they're so interrelated and interconnected, aren't they? And I'm sure you guys know each other, and you're talking to each other and coming up with other new solutions all the time. So unless we have any final questions, I might just bring the event to a conclusion. So thank you very much, Matthew and Josh and Matthew. Really excellent presentations. And I'm sure what we'll do is we'll share with you the people that attended today, and you may wish to sort of connect with them. So this is the last in the series for 2020 in the Tech Trend series. This started really, I suppose, down in the Dublin Dockland area, Grand Canal Square, and also Bank of Ireland were helping and supporting us with the series. We've heard from over 25 to 30 companies this year. New tech starts, maybe tech starts like Matthew's, maybe 2 years, but maybe tech starts or tech companies that maybe wouldn't have been exposed to Ireland. I think going virtual has meant that we've been able to kind of broaden the reach. I know I've been talking to Alice Long about 2021 and how we can really kind of maybe continue with the trend series and broaden the focus a little bit more. Our next event is the 9th of December. It's the final event in our digital transformation series. We've been focusing this year on modern methods of construction. So we have Chris Tisdale, founder and CEO of Ruscus Innovation Solutions. We've got Josh Johnson from McKinsey & Company, Pori King from King & Moffitt, Platt Boyd from Branch Technology, and Amy Marks, the queen of industrialization or the queen of prefab from Autodesk. So that's going to happen on the 9th of December. Maybe the guys that spoke today might want to jump onto that call. I know it is an early start. It's a 10 a.m. start. But listen, we will keep connected with you all. We will stay connected with you all. And I think 21 will be all about the circular economy and business resilience in construction. So just want to thank everyone for their time this morning, for the guys behind the scenes, Elenia, Shannon, Suzanne, and Sam for all the hard work that they do. Just again, maybe Shannon, if you just bring us to the sponsor page on the slides, just to thank our sponsors for the series this year, Diatech, Digital Construction Solutions, i3PT, SIS, and Celebri. And so if any of you that are with us this morning or this afternoon know of other tech companies, or maybe would like to introduce us to other new starts in 2021, please let us know. Or indeed, if any of you would be interested to speak at our events in 21, we'd be glad to hear from you. So stay safe. Thank you, everyone, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.